Palpatine is a Sith Lord. Darth Vader is Anakin Skywalker. Soylent Green is people. Rosebud is the sled. And Charlie Brown never gets to kick the goddamn motherfucking football. In all of Peanuts, it just never ever happens. It just cannot. It is a canonical rule that just can't happen. And just like that, there, I ruined it for you. I bet you guys wish you had a spoiler alert for all of those cinematic masterpieces of American culture and also Star Wars. Anyways, we're going back to Denmark, the best country in the world, because I hate it. I hate windmills. They're bad for the birds. I hate the wooden shoes. I just hate everything about the country. But for whatever reason, we all love this as a sim map. Now, as a sim map, Denmark sucks. It's actually really poorly structured. But you know what? Everyone plays this because it's flat, and it means that radar missiles don't matter. And if radar missiles don't matter, congratulations. The Su-27, 6 of the missiles and 4 of the missiles are not as good anymore. So that's why a lot of people play this map. Also, this is nice and concentrated because, the red side that you're going to try to farm is all stuck up in the top left-hand corner of the map for the most part, so it's going to be a good game. In all seriousness, though, I just want to show people a way to flop around in the magical missile bus and maybe show a thing or two that might improve your flunkering fuckery experience. So the most obvious thing to do to improve your flanker experience is to map your controls in a way that actually makes sense. Like, there is kind of like this common idea that you should fly in manual controls and just learn how to fly them. And I don't really agree with that, because what happens is the manual control curve on the flanker is actually pretty nasty, where you have a compression zone of around just over 700 to 1,000 kph, where the plane doesn't want to pull even in manual. And as soon as you get underneath of that, you actually have to neutralize the stick and start pushing it forward. And trying to micromanage that in manual, especially as a casual player, it just doesn't happen. The best way to actually map your controls is I'm assuming you have a stick, or you have something that's analogous to a stick. So if you're using a controller or whatever, fly in the damping mode, because the damping mode is basically mimics the fly-by-wire system, and if you can mimic the fly-by-wire system, you're going to be AOA limited to around 22, 24 degrees. And then what you should do is map the button for changing the control modes into something that's really easy for you to reach. I have a stick, and my hand sits on the stick, and my middle finger or my ring finger sits on a button where I can tap it, and it will take me to the leveling mode, and it'll take me back to manual. So I have to basically, when you see me do all the control switching stuff, I'm usually just doing a double tap on one of my fingers. So that's the way that I have it mapped. If you have a controller, it's probably a little bit different, but that's kind of step number 1. Step number 2 for making the flanker kind of work, especially in the situations that we're going to throw her in, is run less fuel. Your life expectancy is not going to be 44 minutes. You don't need 44 minutes of fuel. You don't need all of the missiles to try to fight in the merge. The lighter this plane gets, the better it gets. And if you are able to run a lighter fuel load than the other guy, you actually do stand a reasonable chance. Yes, if the guy's good, and he's gonna drag you through the mud, but U.S. teams, U.S. players, most players that play sim are not very proficient in the way to play their planes. The flanker, as much as I talk shit about it, as much as I say this plane's bad, the plane is good enough because of the missiles. The flight model is able to be worked around because of the R-73s, and most good players can force it to work. Where it does fall apart is basically once you teach someone how to fly around the R-73 aspect, and people realize that once it loses energy, it doesn't gain it back, then it becomes really easy for other players to punish you. But I haven't put out a video showing people exactly how to do that. Nobody else really has. People know that is a thing, but there's no readily available guide for American players to reconcile their skill issues. So we can exploit that, and because we can exploit that, and because we can exploit kind of the bullshit magical powers of the R-73, we can kill them in a way that is very, very frustrating for them. And that's kind of what I do on Denmark, is I'm not going for a 30 kill game or a 20 kill game. I'm not really trying to stay alive. I kind of like throwing myself into situations where I shouldn't win, because the way I play this game is I think Sim's cool. I think there is like a skill to getting a higher KD and like playing more conservatively and like learning the game and learning like when to fight, when to not. But a lot of times I use the radar. I look at the radar screen, and I'm like, oh, I see 3 guys. In my mind, if I was smart, I'd be like, hey, I shouldn't go and fly into 3 guys. I should fly back to my team, and then maybe we fly 2v3 as opposed to 1v3 and hope for the best. That is a natural thing to do. That is a thing that would make sense to do. A lot of the times, I don't have the patience for it. I also just value the cinematic experience of like taking something that sucks or taking something that's like slightly like less good and just learning to throw it around in the like most effective way possible. So in order to throw this plane around like your mother, we still have to put it on a diet. We put it on the fuel diet, but we also have to put it on the R27ER diet. Now the best way to use the R27ERs on Denmark is well, either one, you just don't bring them because they're kind of useless, or maybe bring one as kind of like your little secret bee stinger for dudes that are, you know, sitting up high. They're trying to LARP as satellites. In reality, if I'm going to use this plane as a dogfighter, I'm taking 4 R27ERs, and I'm probably shooting the first 2 with the first thing I see, and I don't care if it's on the deck. I might shoot even all 4 of them because getting rid of them sheds weight, and it also just frustrates the other guy because one thing that people do not like having happen is getting hit with the R27ER mortar strike or the AIM-54 mortar strike. So it's a lot of fun, but it also means that the radar missiles are just they're not very useful. I do get a little bit of use out of them in the game here, but usually it just comes down to spamming them at bozos, and then they go into the water, or they're just gonna fly up high. Like this dude, this is a good candidate for an R27ER, but I don't even think I took him for this this spawn. But this guy's there, and now he's not. Now, not all of your flanker kills are going to be third-party kills, but a lot of them in Sim should be. And the way to look for these is you kind of look at the radar, and if you see a friendly going slow and you see someone else like overlapping with them, you can kind of assume that they're in a turn fight. And it means that you need to assess like who's the high guy, who's the low guy, and who's the guy that you need to kill. On the other hand, we just kind of fly in here. We got Dr. Kickass here in Mirage 4000. And as we're flying around, we are kind of just dumping flares. This is a habit I call schizo-flaring. It's like, I don't know if a 9M is coming at me. I know that I'm probably spotted because I'm in something that's the size of the Manhattan building. So we're just going to assume at some point people are going to launch missiles at us. Now we see this guy here, and this is Nomikoma, and he's got 2 fuel tanks on. And when I see 2 fuel tanks, I'm just like, okay, come on, man. I'm pretty much safe to kind of pull in here. Now, with the cannons, with the gun sight stuff, it's tempting to switch to the funnel sight. It's not super important. It is worthwhile to just learn how to aim the thing. And we did get the R73 off. This thing kind of like does the little wibbly-woobledy thing. Like you saw that it did get there eventually. It did get rear aspect. Once it gets rear aspect within about a kilometer, it's kind of like a free kill. Now, when it comes to getting as many free kills with the R73 as you can possibly get, there are a couple of techniques that are going to help you. Number one, like using the HMD is a pretty big deal. If you can be fluid with the way the HMD works, then you're going to be able to react quicker and get your plane into an aspect where you kind of do get that free kill. At the same time, running IRST here, this just reduces our RWR signature. So this is why that Nomikoma doesn't even notice us here. So reducing your radar signature, making sure not to ping everyone's RWR at all times, is also a pretty good way to get into situations where you're going to get more kills. At the same time, with the HMD, one of the things that I do is you want to lead the target. You want to have the enemy plane fly into the HMD, because the HMD will pick up the heat signature of the plane, and it doesn't ignore the flares, but if you have the seeker head just leading the target, the first thing it's going to see is the plane. Sometimes you can time it correctly, because what happens is a lot of guys, they'll turn on periodic flares, but because they want to make their flares last as long as possible, they get a 1 second interval. And what happens a lot of times is you lead them, you get the lock on the plane, and if the circle's on the plane, the circle's on the plane. If the circle's on the flares, then the circle's on the flares. if you lead them and shoot the missile, basically the second that like they leave their periodic zone, usually it will hit. If it's close enough, if you maneuver the plane close enough to them, you can get it to hit. The other thing to consider with the missile, and this is the thing that people have a hard time dealing with, is that the radius that the missile will pull is kind of a factor of speed. So at higher speeds, if the Su-27 is rating, because the missile is launched at 1,000 kph, it's not going to thrust vector itself nearly as effectively, and sometimes it'll go wide. At the same time, if you're basically flat spinning and the missile catches, so if it does like the thrust vectoring thing, and it does like the wibbledy-wobbledy thing, and sometimes it just goes off into wherever, it goes into Narnia. A lot of the times when it does catch, it basically does this thing where it looks like it does like almost a 180-degree turn. And it means that as these guys come in, as the guys try to manage their space, they don't really do it correctly. The other thing is, like, when I do these like over-the-top shots, when I merge, I usually go up and I'm trying to get into a position where I can shoot off an early missile, because if the guy gives me too much space, then I get the missile shot. At the same time, the missile is not, this is not a silver bullet. If the guy is able to flare, if he flares when he recognizes you getting aspect, it's not going to hit. But at the same time, we're going to see this. We're in a 3v1. We've blown all of our speed. We've reached manual mode. And because he's doing the periodic thing, because we're close, and because he didn't like really aggressively flare, and because he gave us the space, that missile pulls in. Now, did we survive this? No, we're not going to survive this. We're going to try to spoil this guy's shot here. We spoil it, but we're in a 3v1. We had another 9M come in from the side, and that's going to happen. That is the reality of the way the game plays. But because we gave him a good fight, because we did our best, those guys are not very happy. This guy comes in. This is something you shouldn't do in the merge. Like, this guy comes in, he doesn't pass, and he does like a Syrian lead turn, but he turns in front of us. Like, there's a way to use the quote-unquote Syrian lead turn in a way that will reduce the radius of the fight and blah blah blah, get him close enough that it will counter the high off bore sight missile. But anyways, we get the kill, but once again, we get the third party. The third party's always there. But we do get the 73. Goop Giggity comes in and gets us with the 9M. And by the time we are taking off, we are being pushed into our spawn. This is kind of like the inevitable kind of end of a sim match, is eventually people will push up against your spawn and start trying to kill you. But because we are heavy, we want to lighten the load, and we just really want to annoy the other person. We're going to do the old R27 ER mortar strike here. We're calling in artillery, and it probably won't hit, but worst comes to worst, we merge, and then we can dogfight with all 6 of our missiles. It makes more sense to shoot him at the guy and make him scared than it is to just drop them, because, like, why fight fair? It's just it's basically the same thing. We're just dropping them while burning up the motor. We're adding some carbon monoxide to the atmosphere. We're warming up the planet. We're making it so that we can grow crops in Siberia. The next merge, we merge with the Mirage 2000. Now, as soon as you see a Mirage 2000, the Mirage 2000 currently is probably the scariest fight for the Su-27, because the Mirage 2000 is basically what you wish that you were. Like, at low speeds, the Mirage 2000 just kind of wins. But if you can get the position first, if you can get behind them, a lot of the times the guys in the Mirage 2000 don't know how to get out of it. And this is kind of like the same thing with like every player. Like, you get behind them really quickly. If you have the energy, it does scare them. Now, at the same time, the reason we're spamming the missiles is like, we need to kill him. If the fight goes on for too long, if it gets to slow speed, if it gets to the point where it's like 400 kph or 300 kph and he decides to loop, we can't follow the loop, so we need to kill him. That's why we're spamming our missiles. We're not being conservative with this. Like, we can go in, we can fight, but if you die, if it goes too long, like, you're not going to win. So you might as well just go for the weight reduction, put the fat chick on the diet, and go for that. Now, at the same time, this guy comes in. I think this is Grim Reaper again. He comes in, he hesitates, and a lot of the times what I go for immediately as soon as I can is I try to go for the second R73 shot I can get, because a lot of the times guys come in, they give you too much space. Like, they'll pass you, they'll wait to turn, and they'll do like a flat turn, and if you went over the top, like if you did a vertical turn, a lot of times the missile will see their afterburner, and it's kind of over for them. Or they just don't see it come off the rails. They're not looking at you at the same time, and it ends up killing them. Now we merge with 2 F-15s here. I don't go for the first one. I go for the second one, and the only reason for that is I'm really concerned. Like, I want to manage the space. Like, I don't want the second guy to be able to shoot a 9M from side aspect at me, so I don't know what he's going to do, but the second one, I had to merge with him, I think, and we get really lucky here. Like, don't go into 2v1s thinking you're going to win it. At the same time, like, if you go into them and you're going to try them, like, try to learn from the experience. Now, what we're doing here is we're actually doing Su-27 tricks. We're using the super maneuverability of the plane to sit inside of a circle. And usually F-15s, anything that is allied, when they go below you, is a pretty decent opportunity to kind of use your Cobra button and kind of sit inside of them. At the same time, if they realize that you can't go up after that, it's something that's really easy to exploit, especially if you understand the relative merits of the F-15. Now, this guy is scared, and that's kind of what we're doing. We have no flares, or we have 3 flares. We have no missiles. We have no cannons. We had a shot. We didn't hit our last 10 rounds. So we're going to kind of force him into the water, let him run into some stingrays, make him play Steve Irwin, and hopefully get the drink. At the same time, like, we can't really run away. We're pretty sure he has missiles. We have no flares. We have 4 minutes of fuel. Like, it's not gonna. No matter what we do, this is not good for us. So I'm just doing the funny thing. Is I'm gonna try to ram him. Maybe I nose him into the water, but he doesn't get the loop here, and he is going to go be playing with the stingrays. And we managed to make it back to the base after this, and we're coming back out. Denmark congregates around like the bases. Like, it's either the top corner of the map, or it's the one base that's off by itself. We're doing the same thing here. We're going to shoot 227 ERs, mainly just because a lot of times guys will avoid one, and then they'll pop back up and they'll eat the second one. So if you space them correctly, a lot of times you can just use 2 as 1, 1 is none. We're just doing weight reduction at this point. This guy comes in, and we're gonna merge with him. F-16, we're doing the same thing. We go up. I like going up in the merge. I prefer going up in the 27 because it is the best way to at least conserve a little bit of energy, because you can kind of use gravity as kind of an assistant to kind of help you out. This guy gives us too much space, though. That's what I'm saying, is like, guys will give you too much space, and R-73, once it gets close, once the seeker head is clamped down, it's pretty good from rear aspect. Like, if you're fighting the Su-27, the thing you don't want to do is give it space, because if you suffocate it, if you get close enough to it and you suffocate it at low speed, it kind of can't do anything. So if you recognize the aspect, if you recognize, like, oh, I'm halfway across the circle, the R-73 can't pull, you're usually chilling against it. But these guys don't really know that. At the same time, this guy comes in, then he kind of eats the 73. Those are one of those shots where I'm like, it's kind of like, I can understand why people don't like it. Like, sometimes that happens with the 9M, sometimes it happens with the Magic. You're like, oh, I pre-flared and it didn't work. When it's like, in bottom ejecting planes, if you have like the burner and the tail angled away, like, you're ejecting the seeker, or you're ejecting the flares outside of the seeker, and sometimes it's frustrating. Like, I've had it happen to me against the Magics. But anyways, that's the game. That's some flanker gameplay. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Spoiler alert, if you didn't, I don't give a shit. Don't watch the channel, or do.